This is Peter Nitschke, who is the General Manager of the Bancroft Minden Forest Company. Peter, tell us who they are.
Well, the Bancroft Minden Forest Company, it's a private company, and it's actually made up of about 27 independent businesses in the Bancroft area that are involved in sawmilling, logging, and the manufacture of paper.
And what's the mandate of the Bancroft Minden Forest Company?
Well, the company, on behalf of all the owners, holds a sustainable forest license to operate and harvest on Crown land in the area. The area sort of south of Algonquin Park down to Gilmore, and from MacArthur's Mills on the east over as far as the municipality of Muskoka and Dorset.
It's a huge area.
It's a huge area. In total about 1 million hectares, or I think that's 1,000 square kilometers. Only about half of it's Crown land, so when we only work on Crown land, and quite a bit of that is parks and conservation reserves and other things that we of course don't operate in.
Why was the Bancroft Minden Forestry Company formed?
Well, it started about in about 1996. The Crown had passed a new act governing forestry, and part of the act was designed to transfer the day-to-day responsibilities of managing the forest to industry to look after and take it out of Crown hands. So we, of course, operate under a lot of government oversight, and basically we're responsible for writing long-range plans and annual plans, reporting, monitoring, and renewing the lands that we harvest.
One of the things that we heard from the foresters when we were out in the bush with them was resource management, and that's a constant theme through everybody we've dealt with. Tell us what resource management is, and maybe you can give us some examples.
Sure. It's and you've seen it in your travels and your visits to our operations. Really what it boils down to is it isn't just about the trees. It's about understanding how our forest interacts with our wildlife species and our water, and conducting our operations and adjusting them in ways that prevents any harm. And you'll have seen this, and the viewers will see this in other parts of this series. As an example, just through the bush here behind us, about 200 feet is a wetland. Of course, the wetland we're not operating in, but it's an important part of keeping our forest healthy. It's all interconnected. Without the wetlands and the water, we don't have the trees, and without the birds, and we don't have the pollination happening. And the forest needs the wildlife and animals as much as the wildlife and animals need the forest.
One of the things that really has struck me is the dedication of the people we've been with of protecting the forest, because they're fishermen, they're hunters, and not only does it provide their living, but in a lot of cases it provides food for the table and sport and many other opportunities for them.
Sure, I mean, they're making a living. They're honest, hard-working people trying to make an honest living. But they also live here, they have deep roots here, and they hunt and fish like everybody else. And really the last thing they want to do is to do anything in their business that's going to create some harm to the things they love to do, and which I think the people really of Ontario really value. It is a public resource that we're managing, and we're conscious of that. Operating in this area south of Algonquin Park does pose some challenges. We're probably a 4-hour drive from half the population of the country, and people can travel freely and use Crown land freely in the area. So it's highly visible. We're operating next door to many landowners, so we're dealing with them one-on-one to educate them and assure them that, show them what we're doing, try to ease any concerns that they have. It's a really complicated business, and that's really something we want people to understand. I don't think generally there's an understanding of the amount of planning and forethought that goes into an operation, and the amount of care and attention that's required to really do things right. And we've been in business now since 1998, so just over 10 years, and I'm constantly impressed by the way the people we work with have embraced the idea and really honestly committed to advancing their own management practices and doing a better job.
Well, you know, as you were saying, you know, you come at it from so many different tiers. You have a long-term plan that looks 20 years into the future of what you're going to do. You write prescriptions where people are planning the execution of a cut, and then you actually monitor what goes on, and you're being monitored while you do that. So it's a pretty detailed process. It's not just going into the bush and knocking down some trees.
No, it isn't. And, you know, a lot of our long-term plans and are subject to a lot of public review. There's lots of opportunities for that. There's a formal process. We have a committee of local citizens that advises us, and so much of what's contained in our long-range plan it comes from government policy and the wishes of government of what they would like to see in our forest, you know, 20, 100, 200 years from now, and so much of that filters down into the day-to-day management decisions we're making just in places like are behind us right now.
Well, interesting, Lou Freeman was telling me that if you see pictures of this area from 100 years ago, there are more trees here today than there was 100 years ago, and I don't think anybody would believe that.
That's very true. That was during the days when the area was just being settled. Places like the old Hastings Road were actually established about 100 or 120 years ago to encourage people to come here and settle and farm, which they did. And a lot of these farms are now being reclaimed by nature because the land for farming is just not that good. Grows pretty good trees, though.
Well, thank you very much, Peter.
It was my pleasure.
This is Ernie Demuth, who is president of the Bancroft Area Forest Industry Association, and Ernie runs his own Demuth Forestry Services. Ernie, tell us who BAFIA is.
Well, BAFIA is comprised of approximately 25 members. They're typically small family-owned and operated businesses in the forest industry. They're forest practitioners ranging from sawmill owner-operators to skidder operators, truck drivers, forest technicians, woodlot owners and managers. Our mission statement is to promote and sustain the forest industry in Bancroft. Sustainable forestry is a big part of our goal. We meet once every 2 months to voice our concerns and to develop action plans to confront the issues that are facing the forest industry today.
Tell us, Ernie, what are the primary goals of BAFIA?
We have many goals. The number one goal would be, as mentioned before, is sustainable forestry. Raising awareness on the importance of sustainable forestry in this day and age. It's not only good for the environment and for future generations, it's also good business to practice sustainable forestry. Also, sustainability for job growth, that we provide new education for new workers and existing workers. Another goal would be to increase landowner awareness and education on the safe practices and how forest management is done today in this area. The principles of forest management are based on the science of how a forest works naturally. It's what's called silviculture. And if you were to define silviculture, it's defined as the art and the science of producing and tending a forest. It's the theory and practice of controlling a forest and the composition, the growth, and the quality of that forest. Another goal would be to provide information and input on environmental issues at the local level. Another thing that BAFIA supports is conducting market research and investigating opportunities for growth of the local industry for new sectors such as value-added wood products, wood pellets, and so on. BAFIA has put out a forest industry directory for landowners. You can get a copy of this at the Ministry of Natural Resources. This has all the members of BAFIA. So a landowner, if they want to come in and they want to get some harvesting done or some tree marking or maybe do a managed forest plan, they can go to this directory and they'll know that the people here follow the same goals and aims as BAFIA.
There's a number of issues that BAFIA undertakes on behalf of the forest industry. Tell us about them.
We've had a lot of accomplishments that we've done through the lifetime of BAFIA. We've put on many workshops, including GPS training. We put on workshops with the Stewardship Council and Ministry of Natural Resources, one called Woodlands, Wildlife and You, with private landowners. We've put on training courses for tree marking and volume estimate workshops for wood products. We have guest speakers come into meetings and they've spoke on many topics, including raptors. We've had the species at risk biologists from the Ministry of Natural Resources come in and speak to us about the species at risk legislation that's coming out now. We've had speakers come in on forest business management. We even get people coming in talking to us about chainsaws and what are the best chainsaws to use.
There's a number of organizations in the area that you work closely with. One of them is the Bancroft Area Stewardship Council. Tell us what the relationship is with the Stewardship Council.
Well, Bancroft Area Stewardship Council has been a part of BAFIA from the inception of BAFIA. The Stewardship Council works with landowners and community projects. Land stewardship means caring for land, air, and water and sustaining the natural processes on which life depends. The Stewardship Council promotes this message to landowners, private landowners, and BAFIA is along the same lines as this. It tries to promote stewardship and give a responsibility to private landowners to maintain and care for their land. The Stewardship Council has been invaluable for doing research for us, anything we need to know as far as finding grants to help promote what we're trying to do or support our initiatives. They're great at digging into that stuff. They perform a great administrative role in the meetings. So they help us run a good ship as far as a committee goes. Their support has been invaluable.
So it's really emerging with private business, merging with government resources to work together on behalf of the forest industry.
Exactly.
Another organization you're in partnership with is Trees Ontario, and as part of that you undertake planting trees. So tell us about what your efforts are there.
Well, Trees Ontario offers a great program to landowners for planting trees. They provide assistance in education and education on how to plant, what species to plant. They also give assistance in funding to plant trees. And it even goes beyond just putting the trees in. They'll even have funding for tending and making sure that the trees survive. The Stewardship Council is the main agent for administering the program, but then they work in partnership with BAFIA, especially on some of our big projects for putting these trees into the ground.
You're also involved with educational programs for youth in the area.
Forestry in the Bancroft area is a major industry. Since day one, mining was a major industry, but forestry's persisted and is still a big employer in this area. It'd be really nice for the young people that decided to stay in this area if they had work to go to. So for Bafia, it's very important, as said before, to maintain a good forest industry, but it's also very important to have a good workforce in place so that we can take from this workforce. We've been strongly involved with a program which is run out of the North Hastings High School. It's called the NOS program, the Northern Outdoors Study Program. They also run another program called FIRST, Forest Industry Related Skills Training. Because there's many facets to forestry. There's habitat management, the science of tree marking and silviculture, and forest ecology, right to operating a skidder and operating a chainsaw. These are very highly skilled positions. So we support any initiatives to train our young people to do this. We've also been involved in the public schools. Grade 2 and 3, just teaching, showing them what the logging truck looks like, what the skidders look like.
One of the things that we really saw as we worked on this project was that an industry that was at one time driven by horse and water power and manpower has been replaced by science, technology, biology, and it's a really different industry than it used to be. And that's one of the things that I found fascinating, is how this industry has evolved from just brute force to technology today and environmental practices. Well, one of the things that we heard consistently as we went about this project, and it didn't matter who we were talking to, whether it was you, whether it was the harvesters, whether it was the forest technicians, everybody said the same thing. They talked about 25 or 30 years from now. To me, that's incredible long-range planning. And if you look at most businesses today, a long-range plan is a 5-year plan if you're lucky, and it's usually a 3-year plan. And to be able to think that far down the road, to me, is a real testament to what the industry is doing.
It's an interesting point from somebody from outside of the industry looking in to point that out, because in forestry, that's just our language. It's the way we think. We are always thinking 25, 30, sometimes 100 years ahead, stuff that's beyond our lifetime, that we're thinking what's going to happen and to the forest. And it all boils down to that nothing is static, nothing stays the same in nature. And it's in a continual state of change. And the amazing part with forestry is you can determine and predict how the forest will change, and how it's going to grow. It's what's called forest succession. And the good part about forestry is we have an influence over that. We have an influence by either altering, improving, maintaining. We can destroy or speed up that change. In forestry, a lot of ways we're fixing now in this area. We're fixing a lot of the mistakes that were done in the past through clear cutting, when it's not suitable, through what's called high grading, by taking the biggest and the best trees, by doing what's called a diameter limit cut, where we take over a certain a size of tree and we cut it. These were bad forest management practices, and in a lot of ways we're working with that now to try and bring the forest back to a more natural state, what they were to begin with.
So really what you start out with is you start out with the long-term plan of what we're going to do in this forest 25 years from now, or even, as you say, maybe 100 years. Then you get to a prescription is, what are we going to do today? And it even drills down further. When you go into the bush and start marking the trees, now we're talking about a specific plan, and we've gone a step further then. And I'm assuming that the prescription doesn't always address everything you're going to see when you go into the bush as a tree marker.
Exactly. You can't just get the course and go start marking. You need a lot of experience and a lot of knowledge, and the more you learn, the better you can apply this art and science.
This is Lacey Rose, and Lacey, you're with the Bancroft Minden Forest Company. Tell us what your role is there.
I'm the planning and renewal forester with the company, so I'm responsible for writing the forest management plan in conjunction with the M&R and the planning team. I also prepare any annual work schedules that lay out our harvest, renewal, and access activities, annual reports associated with those activities, and prepare any revisions that need to happen throughout the year for unexpected events and amendments to the plan.
So what kind of credentials do you need, Lacey, to conduct your job?
To be a plan author and to sign off on documents that are submitted to the Ministry of Natural Resources for approval, you would need to be a registered professional forester with the Ontario Professional Foresters Association, or the OPFA. So normally, to be registered with that association, you would need to have completed a undergraduate degree in forestry and have some postgraduate professional forester experience.
You're currently working on the 2011 long-term plan. Tell us about the plan.
We're working on the plan that takes about 2.5 to 3 years to complete. The plan in general, in the end, it is approved by the Minister of Natural Resources after a very thorough review and approval process by different ministry staff. Every Crown Forestment unit in the province must have a provincially approved forest management plan. These plans are renewed every 10 years and are completed in accordance with the most recent manuals and guides that are provincially endorsed. So there's a number of groups involved in preparing the forest management plan. We have a local citizens committee that provides advice to a planning team that has a number of M&R representatives on it, including a forester, a bio, there's the SFL company reps as well, and we have a number of Aboriginal communities that have an interest in the area that have been involved in the planning team as well.
The process requires a pretty wide base of consultation. Tell us who gives actual input into it. Is it open to everybody?
Any person can provide input on the plan at any time throughout the planning process. There's a number of formal consultation opportunities that take place through mailouts, newspaper postings, environmental bill of registry postings, and we have a bunch of information at our office people can come look at, allocation maps, plan objectives, that sort of thing. But on a more day-to-day basis, it's the planning team and the LCC that are involved the whole way through providing input.
So when you talk about SFL, what's that acronym stand for?
That's the Sustainable Forest Licensee, which is the Bancroft Minden Forest Company.
So what are the objectives of the long-term plan?
There's a number of objectives that we're working with. We're currently in the process of developing these formally right now. It's about much more than wood supply. We have social objectives, economic objectives, ecological objectives. On the social side of things, we provide for recreation opportunities, protecting trails through area of concern prescriptions, that sort of thing. Wildlife is an important thing on many people's minds, so we model for a wide variety of habitats through a computer modeling system that provides us an outlook of what will be should we carry out forestry activities up to 150 years into the future. It's a forecasting tool. It doesn't provide us with exactly what's going to be there, but it gives us an idea. We're aiming to be towards what a natural condition would be, say if people weren't here, there was no fire suppression, no harvesting activities. So that's what gives us an idea of what a healthy forest would be. We work towards that for wildlife objectives, old growth objectives, red and white pine objectives. That's a provincially required one to look at.
So there's a really broad base of issues that you deal with on a long-term plan.
Yep, and we always are considering the current industrial demand of the forest industry. So we have volume targets that we work towards as well. That's an important consideration, but we also have to balance out the ecological objectives.
Because wood is a product that gets used in a lot of different ways. And as such, there's a demand out there that has to be met as well.
Yep, it's definitely important for people to realize that we do need wood products, and we're trying to manage those in the most sustainable manner possible by doing all of this planning. There's a lot more planning behind all of the forestry activities that take place than a lot of people realize, I think.
The long-term plan states basically one of the key issues, of course, is how much wood can be harvested. While there are a lot of other areas you deal with. But what happens after this long-term plan is signed off on and ready to go? Where do we go from there?
Well, as you said, one of our main things that we're planning for is how much harvest area is available to be harvested sustainably. After we know how much we can harvest and we plan where we're going to harvest, then it gets to the on-the-ground activities, what actually will occur in each of these places. And that's when we have our skilled staff that go out and walk all these areas and write the forest operation prescriptions, and that's where activities start taking place that most people are more familiar with.
Thanks, Lacey.
No problem.